Nyco Aviation Incorporated introduced the Lancair prototype in 1985 after 3 years of development. By 1989, the Lancair was outselling all models of general aviation aircraft, with over 600 sold across 20 countries and 6 continents. Nyco Aviation's latest version of the Lancair is the Model 320. This model is available in 2 versions, either the standard kit or the fast build kit, and engine sizes of 160 to 180 horsepower are available. Top speeds can exceed 265 miles per hour. Range is up to 1,450 miles. Fuel consumptions at cruise are between 7.5 and 9.8 gallons per hour. Solo climb rates can exceed 2,400 feet per minute. Cabin width equal to a Bonanza. Style that is purely world-class. Advanced composite technologies.
You know, my idea of a home built was always a couple of boxes put together with wings on it, you know, with square corners and rectangles and things. But this is absolutely not that way. It looks more like a custom factory-built plane. That's why I guess we like to relate it to the Ferrari.
Fantastically beautiful in design.
It looks like a high-performance piece of machinery.
The thing that impressed me most about building the airplane is the parts all fit.
Oh, she loves it. She can't wait to get it finished so we can do our cross-country flying and go back and visit relatives and go to Arizona, Las Vegas, wherever, you know.
I don't know of any other airplane that will fly as fast on the same amount of fuel.
started out home builds were for tinkerers, garage mechanics that liked the idea of flying and building it themselves. That market has changed totally now. Now it's the person who doesn't want the 1940s vintage production airplane. And if they were to buy a new one, they're very expensive, $150,000. And to buy a used one, you've got the rotting, the rusting, the corrosion, the fatigue. That's all coming up now. So they're looking at other options, and the kit planes are the prime option. Last year, our 320 outsold any model of Beech, Piper, Cessna, or Mooney. That's true. And kit planes in total outsold general aviation manufacturers in total. So the trend is there. It's pretty apparent. The reasons for the success of the kit plane are its growing up in the industry, the sophistication, the performance they offer, the cost savings, and the fact that you just can't get these kind of aircraft in the commercial field any longer. There are the say $15,000 to $20,000 used airplanes, but I don't look at them as serious cross-country. Or, if you were to look at that as serious cross-country, you have a very narrow perspective, and you only need 30 seconds flying in this plane, and you'll decide that you have a whole new meaning of what serious cross-country is all about. I can't get in a 130-mile-an-hour airplane any longer. It just doesn't work. If I'm not seeing 200 knots in the air, I feel like I'm wasting my valuable time. Well, the whole aircraft has been, from an engineering standpoint, quite an evolution. Now, all of our work on the plane is all finite element analyzed by one of the best composite engineers in the United States. We do extensive testing on materials. We use materials that are industry standard. We're the only kit plane maker that I know of that uses all these type of materials. Metal finishing is all mil-spec plating. It's either CAD plated, zinc plated, electrostatic, painted, anodized, whatever. The engineering has gotten quite extensive. Now whenever a question comes up on a new development, it's piped right out to our engineering department, which is a separate facility, but we work very closely with. And I think our situation where we have an R&D and a manufacturing facility that's its own entity, and the same with engineering, has made us stronger. We're able to use the best resources that are out there and use them when we need them. And we don't have to maintain that overhead every day. Nobody needs an engineer every day. Our system works, I think, the best for us because the engineer is the best in the country and we have him when we need him. Actually, we have three sources for manufacture. High-Tech Composites is in the United States here. They manufacture for us. They do some R&D work for us. We also have an offshore company in the Philippines that manufactures and does a lot of material testing for us. And we have another company who's a manufacturing distributor in Australia. And they do the same. They'll do R&D, and it's a production backup. We don't buy from them normally, but we could. We have full sets of molds at all locations. I think one of the nice things about our program that we've developed with High-Tech Composites, they are a recognized manufacturer of FAA STC parts, supplemental type certificate. That means that the quality assurance programs that they have to enforce in order to meet the FAA standards of materials traceability, handling, proper layup schedules, total QC, that whole system is up and running, and they use the same system when they manufacture our parts, so we know we're getting the best parts. It's also one of the reasons that we use all high-temperature prepregs. Again, it's a quality assurance. One of the reasons why industry uses all high-temperature epoxies. For example, the prepreg on our materials, we know we have certs from Hexcel and Ciba-Geigy where we get them, and the resin content, for example, will be 39% plus or minus 2%. That's guaranteed, that's documented, that's tested every batch run. The type of materials we have in this plane are very sophisticated materials. Carbon fiber, pre-preg epoxies, honeycomb, makes a big difference. One of the other big advantages of our material selection and fabrication is that the fuselage, for example, is fire resistant. Most composites are not fire resistant. Obviously the FAA requires that, and among other things, that's what we use. The pre-preg won't sustain a flame, and the honeycomb in the fuselage will not sustain a flame. It's a reasonable advantage. Well, that's one of the big advantages. You build an airplane, you get a one-time repairman certificate, allows you to do annuals on your airplane only, and that saves you a lot of money every year. An annual is not difficult. The rationale for doing your own annual is, since you built the airplane, nobody knows that airframe better than you, and that gives you the authority to do the annual, and there's logic behind it, I think. This is a good example to illustrate the double joggle system that we use on the plane. I think this double joggle system is probably one of the single most things that makes this plane assemble, I think, easier than anything else on the market. If you can get in close, you can see this. Every part has a single and a double joggle. You'll see that this piece, which is representative of the tail cone, and this is the vertical fin that would plug into it. It's a matched overlap joint. This piece drops into it. In doing so, it gives you an alignment. It essentially is a pre-alignment for you. Then we use a structural adhesive underneath, and we step this back so it can illustrate a little bit better. We use pop rivets as a clamping fixture. They're later drilled out. The structural adhesive is the primary bond, and into this single channel that's remaining are two wet, what we call bid tapes. Two wet tapes are laid in there. That brings you up flush to surface. It's a real simple micro finish, and you're done. And you can see the quality of the finish on the parts. There's really no body work to do on the plane, very little.
Okay, what about sanding and finishing?
Typically, our parts are unique in that with the pre-pregs, we don't use a gel coat or a gel coat primer. Those materials are really nothing more than resin with a opaque pigment in them. They're very heavy, so we stay away from it, again, as industry does. We recommend that they use an epoxy-based primer. It's sprayed on, typically 2 applications. You sand it, and you paint it. It's pretty simple. Wings are detachable on the plane. That's a big advantage. We forget about that sometimes and not really try to promote it as we should, because most people don't assume that, but it's true. It's about a 45-minute affair to take the wings off. The plane stays completely on the landing gear. You can start it up and taxi it around if you like. Yeah, the fact that our plane has removable wings makes it an easy plane to build at home. You can jig the wing up onto the airplane and then take it back off again and continue building. Yeah, the gear is all custom. We get asked about that a lot. The gear is custom to this airplane, and I'm happy to say that it's been foolproof. People worry that, sometimes the gear is going to get stuck up or whatever. We've never had a case where once the gear went up, it would not come down. That's never once happened. It's a very simple gear system. It's electromechanical, operates by hydraulics. If the hydraulic power pack should quit, you can free fall it down. If you run out of hydraulic pressure, it'll come down and lock by itself. There's a 100-pound gas strut that pushes the nose gear out into the wind. The springs over center links, they are activated by the springs. So, simple system. Many people ask us about engines. What engines are the best to use? Should I buy a new engine, used engine? We now have an OEM dealership arrangement with Lycoming, and we offer, among other things, factory new Lycoming engines, 160 horse, 180 horse. We offer brand new Hartzell propellers, narco avionics, autopilots, you name it. We've just about got everything on the airplane that you could ever conceivably want.
I have found that the Lancair Corporation has been just fantastic. They have answered questions. They have, there's one or two small changes they made. They supplied the parts at no cost.
But even from the beginning, why, geez, anything you wanted, advice or pieces or anything, you couldn't ask for any better support.
No, I would rate them as being first class. I don't think there's another kit manufacturer that's as good as they are.
You know, they've all become good friends of mine.
Builder support's a big issue. It's, you know, we try to cover the bases as best we can in the manual, but there's always things that come up. So we have two fellas in our staff that are both experienced builders that are here, and it's almost a full-time job for both of them. When we sell an airplane to somebody, it's not a pat on the back and goodbye. It's really a handshake and hello. And we know we'll be dealing with them for the time it takes to get their airplane done. And that's fine. That's what we're here for. In 1986, we delivered our first kit, and now, 3 years later, we've got about 75 of them flying. That's rewarding from our standpoint, I guess you might say, because we can see that, yes, indeed, these planes can be built relatively easily and relatively quickly. The time is a giant spread. We've had builders complete an airplane in 1,000 to 1,100 hours. I have to say that's probably pretty rare. We've had builders flying in the 2,000-hour range. So the 1 year we made a poll at Oshkosh of the 8 planes that flew in, and it averaged 1,600 hours. So we use that as a number, and it's a reasonable number for someone with nothing particular as far as skills. We try to build an airframe that doesn't require special talents or special tools to build. And we now have what we call a fast build kit that's just recently been fully approved by the FAA under the 51% rule, which means we're building right to the limit of 51%. And the balance has to be built, or that 51% has to be built by the owner. We're right there. What the fast build does is eliminate about 600 to 700 hours off your building time. That's a sizable chunk.
Had the fast build kit been available when I purchased this, I'm sure I would have gone for that.
The standard airframe has 41 pieces to it for the exterior surfaces. In the fast build option, we take those 41, do major sub-assemblies on them, and it ends up being about 6 giant pieces now that in some cases just bolt together. It's a pretty impressive affair. This is an outboard wing panel for the 320. It's the fast build version. This is just the way it comes to you. The main spar is pre-molded. It's bonded in position to the wing skin, which we're looking at it upside down. So we're seeing what is the 2 fuel bays. The ribs form it. The ribs are installed. The back spar web is installed. It's been pre-aligned to the center section, and that's been pre-aligned to the fuselage. So it's, you can see where a lot of the hours are gone. This is a section of the horizontal stabilizer. This is actually the top. And it has the 2 webs, all the ribs, and they're again bonded in. And the bottom is aligned as far as flatness and trueness. The elevator is done the same way. The rudder is done the same way. Ailerons are done the same way. Flaps we don't address because of the logistics of how the plane goes together. This is the 320 wing as it comes in the fast build kit. It's comprised of 3 major sub-assemblies, the 2 outboard wing sections and the center section. They've been attached here to illustrate a little more clearly. The wing ribs are all installed, the back spar, the front spar, the wing skins. Closeout webs are installed. All the wing attached hardware is in. Lines for electricals installed in the D section. Belly pan is attached. Wing fuel is converted out of these bays. This has all been attached and pre-aligned once to the fuselage, and I think it represents a big, big savings in man hours. And this is virtually how you get it. If somebody were really working fast, they could probably open their crate, put this thing together to the point where the fast build looked like a nearly finished airplane, and they could do it in probably 15 seconds. One thing we've been doing that's going over very well with the builders that are finished their airplanes, they ask, now what do I do about test flying this plane? We have an in-house test pilot that has inspected and test flown many airplanes for customers. We've sent them all over the world already. We have an independent test pilot who does the same thing. The way we operate, it's on a shared expense basis. We don't make a profit on this. We just want our expenses covered, and it ends up being very beneficial for the pilot, who's the new pilot. Another option is for the builder to come here, check out with us in our company plane, and get some stick time and feel pretty comfortable before he goes back and test flies his own aircraft. That's been a very effective program too.
This airplane it's very stable. You can put it in any attitude and it'll stay there, but it takes almost no force to get it to respond.
Roll rate's spectacular. It's we publish 120. We've demonstrated 140 degrees per second as a roll rate, like most aerobatic aircraft. It does very nice rolls. It's differential ailerons, so you can do rolls, you can do essentially all your flying. I've gotten to be very lazy on the rudder because you don't use the rudder in the air. Some people just don't believe it but until they fly it, but you just don't use the rudder in the air. The dampening on it is positive in all respects. It's a three-fingered airplane. You fly with a thumb and two fingers, and that's it. We have a long tail moment on it. It makes for a stable platform, relatively speaking, although it's still a light touch. Well, the performance on this airplane is nothing short of phenomenal, really. This particular one has 160 horse Lycoming in it. That's the same engine that's in the Cessna 172. I haven't flown those planes in so long, I don't know how slow they are, but I do recall they're quite slow on a relative scale. This plane tops out at about 255. And of course we're burning the same fuel because we're running the same engine. So we're close to doubling the speed. In fact, I think we're a little more than doubling the speed from the Cessna that it came out of, and getting there in a lot more style.
It'll go from point A to point B rapidly, or you can just go out and fly around the pattern and have a ball. It doesn't burn that much gas. Usually if you have an airplane that is a good cross-country airplane, you wouldn't go out Sunday morning and shoot touch and goes because it's phenomenally expensive to go fast, where this airplane will do both. You can go out and do some mild aerobatics, you can fly it around the pattern, or you can go a 400 or 500 mile trip.
One of the things we're also doing is installing a 180 horse engine into this plane. With the 180, we have one flying. With the 180 horsepower, we're seeing speeds of a little over 265 miles an hour. And climb rates are up about 300 to 400 feet a minute in addition to what we see with this plane. So we're getting into some real spectacular numbers for cross-country flying. Climb rate on the plane is about 2,400 feet a minute solo, and at gross weight, it's about 1,600 feet per minute. Well, when you're cruising cross-country in this plane, and our Loran will point that right out to us because we have an interface with our fuel flow meter. It'll give us our miles per gallon, and we'll see about 30 miles per gallon. Better than a Volkswagen, and we're cruising at 240 miles an hour. Range is real good on this aircraft. We flew loaded down out of here, Los Angeles nonstop to Aspen. That was 3 hours and 15 minutes, I believe. When we landed in Aspen, we had enough fuel. We could have flown halfway back to LA again. So it makes for a nice cross-country business plane. The cockpit area on this plane, the 320, is 42 inches wide. Production airplanes come in anywhere from 39 typically to about 41. I think the Mooney is about 40 and the Bonanza is about 42, the same as ours.
I rattle around inside it. There's plenty of room for me, and I'm not used to that. It's quite nice.
We fly with sticks in this plane. It feels natural. You put your hand on the armrest and you lay your hand where it wants to go and the stick is there. It's real comfortable.
When you're sitting in the airplane, everything's well within reach, but you don't feel cramped or crowded at all. It's kind of like a nice, familiar recliner chair. You know, you just sit there and very comfortable.
Unlike some airplanes, some kit planes that have a big wing carry-through that you're actually cradled over top the wing and your feet are up on top of it, ours is not so. You've got a nice footwell that you can kind of move your feet around in. Makes flying a lot more comfortable. And once you've had the visibility, you don't want to give it up. You can roll into a 90-degree bank turn and just look here, and you see it. You see where you're going. I mean, that's one of the big comments we always get, the spectacular visibility in it.
With the 320, you're able to see very well over the nose. There's no visibility problems. Very short rollout. There's little inertia, so it stops real easy. Just a real easy airplane to fly.
We get asked often about insurance, and no, insurance is not an issue. One of the larger insurance companies in the country, they're well affiliated with the Experimental Aircraft Association, and they have an official rating for Lancairs now. They're enough in the air, and it's a rate that's just about on a par with a Mooney. So any insurance you want is really not an issue. It's relatively inexpensive. A person looking for an aircraft today has got, you might say, 3 choices. If he's looking for something that's got some reasonable cross-country potential. He can buy a new aircraft, any of the production planes that aren't too many of them being built anymore, but of the ones that are. They won't go as fast as this, but they'll be reasonably fast airplanes, and they'll cost $150,000 to $200,000. I flew in a new one out of Oshkosh last year. It was a brand new one, hadn't been delivered yet. It was $375,000. That's not a reasonable choice for a lot of people. They look at the used planes. They're in the $50,000 to $100,000 range, and while they may be a reasonable alternative, often cases when you buy the plane, it's just admission to the club, and the bills start rolling in from that point on every annual. The other option is to buy a kit plane. You get the performance that you can't match with a production plane, and you'll build the plane for, it's conceivable to build this plane for $35,000 or $40,000. Most people won't. They'll put more into it because it becomes a relatively serious airplane that will take serious trips. So we've got people with $30,000, $40,000 on the instrument panel with weather radar and slaved HSIs and you name it, they've got it on it. But to get a kind of an all-round average number, it might be $45,000 to finish an airplane. And a little bit of your time.
When you fly the airplane, it just feels right. It feels like it has no, it's not going to do anything bad to you, and it's just, I think the airplane's enjoying flying as much as you are flying.
Basically, it looks good and it's fast.
Yeah, it's a beautiful plane.
I've had a lot of fun with the whole thing. I mean, there hasn't been a negative part to it anywhere. You know, I'd advise anybody to do it.
All comes in a box, you put it together, you go fly.